my grandfather Clonch, my grandmother was, her health wasn't good, and she was in and out of hospitals. And every time she'd go in the hospital, my brother or I, one, would go down and stay with my grandfather. He just lived 100 yards from us, and spend the night with him just to keep him company. And my granddad was accustomed to going to bed at 8 o'clock and getting up at probably 4 in the morning. And I can recall an instance when I would be in bed with him, and something would wake me up about 4 o'clock, and he was maybe before 4 o'clock, and he wasn't there. And I got up to check on him to see where he was, if he needed something or whatever. And I sort of tiptoed through the hallway into the kitchen, and in the kitchen I could see a light on in the living room, which was right next to his recliner. And I was only about, I don't know, 8, 10 years old at the time. And I went into the kitchen, then I could peep around and look into the living room, and he would be in his recliner with his reading glasses on and a big Bible in his hands, and he was reading scripture. And I never knew that about my grandfather. And I remember sharing that with my brother, and my brother said he witnessed the same thing when he stayed with him. But it gave me another view of my grandfather. I'd never seen that side of him before. He always attended Sunday school, never missed Sunday school. But he wasn't a churchgoer on any special occasions or anything like that. But that gave me some assurance that he knew that who was in control of these things on earth, because he was in there reading his Bible at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Well, the first sawmill that I remember he had was back in the 40s. I was just a little fellow, probably, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years old at the most. He had it across the creek from where Rod lives, on the farm. Just a small mill, but what I remember about it more than anything was going with him over there when I was just a kid, and he powered that mill with a straight 8 Buick engine. Straight 8 Buick engine. And I remember what he did, he just cut that car in two, right behind the body, and left the hood on it. Left the hood and the fenders were still on it. And I would go with him or be there with him when he would raise the hood and check the oil in that engine.
Oh my
I'll never
gosh.
forget that. And he had that pulley rigged up on the transmission of that car.
You got a water can
to run that main saw in that mill. That's about all I remember about that.
It blew off of that. I had to set it up.
But he also had a boiler there that he fired with natural gas to heat the water to wash the logs. He run the mill about 8 hours. He sawed timbers for the coal industry.
Okay.
The coal mines, support timbers.
Okay.
Support timbers for the coal mines in the area.
Yeah.
And that's about all he did at that time. He had that same mill up Bulletproof,
Really?
if you remember. Well, he had a sawmill over in that hall at one time.
Okay. Okay.
But I remember he quit running that mill in 1948 when we moved to Pennsylvania. He and my dad sold out the mills. My dad had a mill up Bentry at the same time, or up in the upper end of Dixie at the same time, and they sold everything. Both sawmills and everything they had. And our dad moved to Pennsylvania to go to seminary.
The first location is at just below Dixie. It's right on Route 16. It's really just a small place that not much bigger than where you'd find a service station or something like that. Matter of fact, it was later used for a service station, but he just had a portable mill he could put in anywhere. It didn't take up much room, much space at all.
Harrison's challenges that he might have had right at the start of the war.
That was probably pretty good business for him back then. You know, things were booming, I guess, pretty good. Coal mines, I guess, were going pretty strong. But the only challenges that I can think of, would be lack of machinery to handle the logs and the lumber products. It requires so much labor to do everything. Had to do everything by hand. And to me, that would be a major challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, thinking about that now. But no forklifts to handle the lumber. No machinery to load the logs with. Everything was done by hand. And
How many people you suspect worked for him in those days? What would you guess?
he probably had 6, 7 people working in the woods, taking timber out of the woods. Then on the mill, probably 10, 15 men on the mill. So he probably had, I don't know, maybe 20 people altogether. Not a big operation at all, but because they couldn't produce a lot.
Right.
You know, they didn't have the machinery to do it with.
Right. And they had that team of horses, which was contracted. Tell me the names again.
The family that he had doing the logging were the Nicholses.
Right.
The ones that I remember, there was people prior to that. But back in the early 50s, he had Green Nichols, and Green had 2 sons. One of them they called June. Everybody called him June, and Bill. And they all 3 worked in the woods, driving teams. So it took, I'm sure they all worked together. They're pretty close. Of course, you had to have a timber cutter. You had to have 2 men on a saw cutting timber. One on each end of the saw, cutting it by hand. Then you had to have a limber. He cut the limbs off with an axe. And he also used an axe to notch the tree, to notch it the way they wanted it to fall.
Where did he do you remember, where would Harrison have purchased like the saw blades and those big saws?
The one that I remember was Smith Sawmill in Charleston. Smith Sawmill down on West Side sold Frick machinery.
You remember going down there with him?
Yeah, I sure do. The grab hooks, the skippers. It was just like a big hammer with a sharp point on the end where you hit the back of that grab hook and knock it out of the log. And you had to be careful you didn't break it off, and leave a piece of it in the log because it would hit the saw at the mill. But, talking about the work that they had to do, there was a lot of work involved in loading those logs in the woods because they had to build, they'd build 2 skidways, and they'd take logs to build that skidway, and they'd crib it up with logs this way and then logs this way out on where the truck would pull in. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they'd fill that in, and they'd have one built where it'd be the height of the truck bed, say like 4 feet, 5 feet high. Then the other skidway would be much higher than that, so where you could top out that load, put logs up higher.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it was all done by hand. You had to roll those logs up those skidways, and I've helped load a lot of them that way when I was young.
What kind of tool would you use to move those logs on the skidway?
A cant hook, a peavy, and a cant hook. A peavy, the only difference was a peavy had a sharp point on a spike where you could spike the log,
Okay.
And a can hook just had little teeth on it to where it would just grip the log to turn it. And you get a big old butt log, those things are heavy, and you'd put those heavy logs on first on the bottom of the truck. Mm-hmm. They would go on first. Then the smaller logs, you'd roll up the high ramp.
So the horses would pull them out of the woods, but then the men had to get them up onto the truck. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, he did that for several years, I guess, from 1956 to 1974, or 1970, 56 to 1970. He had some pretty rough times because he had mills to burn on at least 2 different occasions, wasn't it? Up Bell Creek, when the original site up there.
He had a mill to burn probably in about 56.
Yeah, and then he had another one.
Senior in high school.
Really?
Yeah.
What would start the fires? I mean,
He burned his waste, and I suppose that some fire from his waste pile, with wind would blow it in and get contact with dry sawdust or something and start it. But he had another fire in
64.
1964. So he had some tough times. Then Dad's health wasn't good, and I think that's one reason Huey came back here in 1970 to help him out. And
well, at that time was Hugert. Was he still cutting, supplying the coal mines, or
yeah,
what was his big?
Basically, it was just the coal mine, the underground mines that he supplied timbers for. A little bit of lumber, but not much.
He and my dad and my grandfather built that mill, a circle mill, and ran that mill with 2 Minneapolis Moline engines. One of them was a much larger engine than the other one, and they ran off of natural gas. The big engine ran the main saw, and the other engine ran the edger and a line shaft, and off of that line shaft, or jack shaft, they would run the cut-off machine. They would run a belt to the rear end that drove the waste chain, and also a wedge machine off of that jack shaft.
Very creative.
I think it was probably 1968, somewhere along there. Dad put a mill on that property. The property then was owned by Cannleton Coal Company, but he put a mill there and actually ran a mill from there for probably 5 years, 4 or 5 years. But it was a small area. It wasn't near the area that we needed. One of the reasons was that he put a mill there. That was at the end of Appalachian's run of 3-phase power. When Dad had a mill on Up Bell Creek back in the 50s and early 60s, he ran those mills with a Minneapolis Moline natural gas engines. He put a mill down toward Dixie on that property there in the late 60s, and that was simply because he had access to 3-phase power that he didn't have before. Dad's health had gotten quite bad during the late 60s, and because of his health, he really couldn't run the business like it should be ran, and a lot of things were going on that he probably even didn't know about. So anyway, I was working in Oak Hill at the time, and one weekend I went to see Huey, and he worked in Salisbury, North Carolina. And one weekend I went down there primarily to talk to him about Dad's situation and see if he would be interested in coming back here and helping Dad out. You know, there are certain things that I could do to help Dad, but it needed someone with a lot more mechanical ability than what I had. And anyway, I went to see Huey and talked extensively about the situation, and Huey didn't really know what he should do. And I remember him asking me, he says, "Do you think I can turn it around, and do you think we can be profitable?" And I assured him I thought that they could. So it wasn't long after that he came back, and I think it was in probably the summer of 1970. And Huey came back and started managing it all himself, and things began to turn around shortly thereafter. But it wasn't long after I was there, and he put his house up for sale and sold it. Matter of fact, I helped him move back here. And
Really?
he came in and ready to go to work, and he did a great job. Yeah.
So he just jumped right in. He didn't have any trouble
No,
transitioning from his previous job.
He knew what to do. He knew how to get things going, and fortunately, that turned things around. And Dad was okay with it. I think Dad knew his health wasn't good enough for him to stay in charge of everything, and he sort of let Huey do what he had to do.
So Huey was, I'm assuming he's running the day-to-day, plus I guess Huey, was he also looking for other avenues to sell lumber? Because
Yeah.
they had already transitioned past supplying the mines.
They were still in that business at the time, but he expanded that business considerably. Huey did while he was there. Added more customers, as well as he got rid of some people that weren't doing what they supposed to be doing. They wasn't doing the job, and he turned it around. He turned around real quick. And matter of fact, about every evening, Huey would call me at home and tell me what was going on, just to let me know. He did a fabulous job to turn it around. Huey and Dad worked together for probably 4 years, I suppose, something like that. And then Dad wanted to retire, and I think it was 1974 probably. And he wanted to retire, so Huey and I bought Dad out, bought the whole business out. Dad and Mom went to Florida and started spending winters down there then, and I think it prolonged Dad's life some. Dad passed away in November of 78. And then shortly after that, in May of 79, I quit my job in Oak Hill. I went in business with Huey then.
So how many years did you and Huey actually get to work together?
We worked over 40 years together, I guess, 43 to be exact. Huey was very mechanically inclined, and he could do a lot of things that I couldn't do, didn't know how to do, but he could do those things to make sure everything was running right. And I sort of hopefully added something where I could do the accounting work, tax work, whatever work that I could to complement what he was doing. And both of us together we worked great. We worked great. I sort of handled the financing, any financing we had to have, lines of credit or whatever we needed. I handled that, and he would accept about anything I'd come up with, if it was reasonable, of course. And that's how we got along good, because I knew what I was capable of doing. He knew what he was capable of doing.
Did you both meet and greet clients together?
We did.
Yeah.
In the early years, we did. We knew where our customers were. We'd go see them from time to time. They'd visit us, and we both took part in that, as well as any timberland that we tried to lease. We both were instrumental in buying timber or buying the timber right. And we actually worked together, even though we were both of us retired, but we would go to the office and talk things over. And we were still involved in it to some extent up till the time that Huey passed away in October of 2022. So that's over 43 years, I guess. And of course, Huey has 2 sons that joined the company back right after they got out of college, Rod and Scott. And they were very active, have been active in it ever since they started, and still are, of course. And then those 43 years, one of the first things we did, put in some old DH kilns, and which were not real efficient, but we dried lumber with those for probably 10 years or so, and we didn't have the room, we didn't have the land to put a lot of money into equipment and buildings and equipment that we were leasing the land, so we didn't want to invest a lot of money in equipment that was on leased land. So finally was able to buy the land where we are now, and we started investing in dry kilns there. We put in 4 kilns and with steam kilns. A few years later, we added 8 more kilns, and then in 2005, we added 4 more kilns. That was on the kiln side, and then the mill, we built a new mill in 1990. We took our time putting it up, doing it right, and 1991 or 2, somewhere along there, we started a new mill up. We had 2 mills in it at the time. And in 2005, we added a 3rd mill in that same building, which is a scrag mill. And then going back a little bit, 1974, we put in a bark mill, which was, as it turned out, was probably a mistake. But the only reason we got into it, we didn't have anything to do, any place to go with our bark. We had to debark our logs, of course. We were making wood chips for Westvaco. And we didn't have any place to go with bark. We were just piling it up. So we got the idea that we'd put in a bark plant, which we did. We took the bark and we'd run it through a grinder. We even had a bagger. We bagged bark. We sold it in bulk, and that was good business for 2 or 3, 4 years, something like that, because our market was in southern Ohio, Cincinnati area. And then we were the 2nd bark plant in the Appalachian area, I guess. There was one in South Charleston, Ohio, and then one here at Dixie. And we couldn't, all of a sudden, everybody wanted to get into it. And people between us and Cincinnati, there was several bark plants that went in. So because of the cost of freight, we got out of it and sold it out and sold the equipment out in 1992, I believe it was. It wasn't the best thing to do, but it was the only thing we could do at that time with our bark.
I started working at the mill whenever I was in my younger teenage years. My brother and I, as soon as school was out, the very next day we had to go to work, which neither of us really enjoyed, but later in life we found out why he had us do that. And today, my dad's passed away, but my brother Scott and I, we own and run Clonch Industries. We work together, and Scott runs the sawmill and the log operation, and I take care of the kiln yard and sales. I started working here full time just as soon as I graduated college in 1988, and so far it's been 36 years that I've been here. Whenever I first started in 1988, that was the year that my uncle Dale Clonch, he was voted to a seat in the West Virginia legislature. And Dale had always taken care of the sales for Clonch Industries. So the day I showed up, Dale had to go to the legislature, so Dad handed me a Rolodex and said, "Here, sell lumber." And I said, "Well, I have no idea how to do it." And he said, "Here's the names." He said, "Call each person, each company, and see what they're interested in." And I said, "What about prices?" He said, "Go back to the old invoices and find out what we got for it last time." So that began my career in sales. And it was a little bit hectic to start with, but I really enjoyed it. Back then, in 1988, Clonch Industries sold a lot of our lumber through brokers. Brokers are people that go find customers to sell to. Then they'll come and buy our lumber, and they'll make a percentage on selling it. So we did that several years, but I decided to find my own customers and not use brokers. So I ventured out and started finding some people that actually used it to make furniture, doors, panels, trims, and we started developing a whole new base. And we all the different places we sold at that time was domestic, except we sold some stuff into Canada. But the entire market shifted later on, and the majority of the business now is in Asia. And so we ship 90% of our product to China, Vietnam, South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, and here recently we're starting to sell lumber to India. So I've made several trips overseas to see the facilities that they have and get to know some of the people, and we've been very successful with this new venture, and we're always looking for new customers and trying to improve the product and the service that we have at Clonch Industries.
What are they using it for primarily in Asia? It's kiln dried lumber that you're sending?
It's kiln dried lumber, and my first trip over there was in 2008, and I went to one of the biggest manufacturers in China. They had 14,000 employees, and they all lived there at the company. The company gave them housing, provided grocery stores and other services for them, so they didn't have to leave for anything. And they ran 100%. They ran 24 hours a day, had different shifts for each person. But as I toured the plant and watched how they do things, it was a typical manufacturing facility. But at the end, I went out to the shipping department, and I saw the furniture being put in boxes for Broyhill Furniture, Drexel Heritage, all the names that we have here, Bassett. And so all the manufacturing that used to take place in the United States, has now went to Asia and different areas.
Right, just speak a little bit about what type of lumber are you sending? What are we harvesting here?
All of our logs come within a 50-mile radius of here in Dixie, West Virginia. And we manufacture lumber out of red oak, white oak, poplar, hard and soft maple, ash, hickory, walnut, and cherry. Just whatever we can get, out of the timber of the woods that we own, we will cut it and bring it in here. And so we have a wide range of different species that we use. Well, Clonch Industry has our amount of employees vary to some degree, but I think right now we've got close to 70, and they're all mostly local people here that, and they either work in the sawmill or in the woods or here at this facility. when I was a kid growing up, only thing that Clonch Industries had was a sawmill, and so they cut a lot of mine materials. You know, different products that they needed in the mines, like half headers and flyboards and crib blocks. But my dad, he kind of transitioned from that and started cutting more lumber than mining products, and he put in 2 kilns. And when utilizing those 2 kilns, he found out that was a more profitable way to make lumber. So that's when decided to build the lumber yard we have today. And we've got about 600,000 board feet capacity in our dry kilns. So we also have automatic lumber stackers, where before you would have to place lumber on stick by hand. So we have the machinery that places it on stick for us, and we have a wide variety of forklifts and other equipment to help us move it around, and then the dry kiln that makes the product usable for the items that are made out of it, like the window trim and doors and the flooring and all anything like that.
And speak a little bit too about what you were just telling me with the house. What are you using that old place for?
The house was originally the main office. My dad and his brother Dale bought it back in the 80s sometimes, but we grew out of it and had to move our location just across the road. But we repurposed the old office, and that's where our forestry division is. So they maintain offices there, and also with that old dry kiln facility we use is our maintenance department. It's where we take our forklifts and other type of machinery to be repaired or be maintained.
Tell us a little bit about going through those years of the pandemic and what you had to do to keep the sawmill going.
Well, the pandemic, definitely affected our company. It seemed like people, stopped buying hardwood products at that time. It became real challenging to be able to change the company to where it could remain profitable. But a lot of sawmills went out of business, which cut the supply down quite a bit. But we decided we're always doing all of our homework and deciding how we can move forward the most successful way. And so instead of cutting a lot of lumber, we started cutting items like railroad ties, pallet flitches, which are made into they're resawn into pallet material. Even this time right now it's challenging. One of the huge problems we have is labor. We cannot find enough people to work, and the people that we do get to work, the majority of them don't seem like they care to work or not. In my teenage years, I didn't have a choice during the summer break. I had to work. And so my dad insisted that my brother and I work here at Clonch Industries. And he had a stacking lumber, which is very heavy, very hard work. I know now that I'm at this point that I am at my age now, I know why my dad did it. But I still didn't like it after having to do it, because my friends be going to the beach, be going to the rivers to fish, and I was stacking lumber with my brother. But it's paid off. It taught us, we learned a lot about work and about how to handle men, and just overall it's been I knew what my dad was doing.
Good thing. Have you had any of your kids working here through the years?
I've got 2 of them, full time.
Oh, 2 of them full time here.
I trained Harrison. Harrison came in I'm glad he came in when he was, because finding some of the guys that are really specialized, like lumber graders, that's something you have to go to school for, a lot of experience. Harrison went through that. Now he's one of our lumber inspectors.
I didn't know
my daughter
that.
Kristen, she works at the sawmill, and she runs a couple of different technical machines over there, and it's been a big payoff, to have her involved as well. They will be, both of them are 5th generation.
Obviously, we grew up around a sawmill, so Dad had us exposed to it, at a young age, probably intentionally. He probably wanted us to, to be familiar with it. But sometime in the early 80s, he started requiring us to work summers. I mean, it wasn't bad. We mainly just stacked mine materials and things like that, just general labor, Rodney and I. And, it was every summer, maybe not more than 6 or 8 weeks, but you know, we worked. We worked all day, just like every other employee. You know, 7 o'clock I think the hours were 7 to 3:30 back then. Long days for, you know, 14-year-old kid, but he required that, and you know, of course, you know, we wasn't real fond of it, but looking back, I think it was, you know, I think he was on to something. You know, give us a little bit of work experience, work ethic, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, we did that, and that was required of us from all the years we were in high school. We worked summers up here doing various jobs. You know, we wasn't always just doing the same thing. He kind of tried to expose us to different jobs. You know.
Did your dad pay you when you worked in the summers?
Well, yes. You know, like I said, I don't know what the minimum wage was back then, but my first summer working here, I remember specifically I was paid $1 an hour, and so, you know, $8 a day, $40 a week, which that's for a 14, 15-year-old kid, you know, that was probably all right. That was probably minimum wage, but it sounds kind of low.
That was pretty sweet back in the day, wasn't it?
Then college came, and I went, I think one year to over there to college, and I decided that it wasn't for me. I just wanted to work. So I told Dad, I just want to go to work for you. So him and I came up with an idea that I'd go down to lumber grading school down in Memphis. That was back in 87, 88. I went down to the lumber grading school, which was just a 3-month course. But so I did that, and excellent for anyone that's going to be in this type of business to know, you know, about the grades of lumber. I mean, lumber grading school was back then was kind of a big deal. But I did that for 3 months, and then I came back, and that kind of worked out. I graded some lumber for him. Of course, you know, I changed my mind, decided I want to go back to college. That fall of, you know, after that, of '89, I went back to college. This time I stuck it out, and got my degree in business.
Was that from Tech?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
actually an industrial management degree is what it is.
Okay.
But then up on graduating from college, I decided I still wanted to work here. So this is the only place I've really worked. I got an associate degree in mechanical engineering, and then I got a bachelor's in industrial management. Just a 2+2 that they had at the time.
Okay.
My dad wanted me to learn, you know, the sawmill. And you know, I'd graded lumber, but I didn't really know a lot about the sawmill other than just, you know, I've been around it. So I think we were still. It was toward the end of this installing this new mill. So he put me with an old guy named Toad Rutledge. Toad taught me. Toad was a electrician. He's the one that did all this electrical work in this mill. Did a lot of electrical work for Dad and Dale over the years. Bark plant, you know, everything. It's always Toad. And I worked with him, and that's how I got my electrician trade. Because I'm a licensed electrician because of Toad, and I still do the troubleshooting here as far as the electrical. He really, him and I became good friends over the years, and he taught me a lot as far as electrical and being an electrician. So, and then I was a log scaler.
And what's that? For those who don't know, what's a log scaler?
Log scaler is every log that's delivered into this mill has to be recorded, the scale, the footage of it, the grade of it, the species of it. That's how you pay your landowners and your loggers, you know. So the
Like
log
it-
skiller's he's the guy that determines all that. So I did that, and then probably I've been a sawyer. You know, I filled in as a sawyer when one of our sawyers became. I think he got hurt or was ill for a few months, and I just had to go up there and learn that kind of on my own. But I'd been around it long enough, and then I got into the dry kiln part of it. Dale was looking after. He was doing all that with the dry kilns, and so he introduced me to all that, and I took all that from him, and I looked after the dry kilns for. Well, I'm still got my hands in the dry kilns, but yeah, I took that over from him, and because he had his hands full here at the sawmill. Dale was looking after the sawmill. This is back in the late '90s. I was the lumber buyer. I bought green lumber from other sawmills because back then we didn't have as large of an operation as we do now. We added another mill back there, so we supplemented what the mill was producing by going out and buying green lumber all across I don't know, 3 or 4 states. In 2006, my dad and Dale wanted me to come down here and run the sawmill for them, manage the sawmill. So Dale could kind of transition out of this part. I mean, I was reluctant because I knew it was a lot of work. It's tough running this thing. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of stress with it because this sawmill has to produce a certain amount monthly. If something goes wrong, and you know you'll run into little things throughout the month or almost weekly that's going to hinder that production. You know, whether it's a part that needs replaced or you know just any kind of issue. You run into all kinds of things. I mean, there's so many moving parts out there. I mean, I can't even describe it. And I remember that guys would bring me a part in here and say, "We need one of them." I'd say, "Well, what is it?" But after doing it since 2006, I've probably seen every part that's in that sawmill at one time or another. So that's not a thing anymore. But Dale retired, I think, in 21. Before he retired, he wanted me to learn some of the things he was doing, which that's when that started. I think in 21, he introduced me to that, and that was a whole new something I hadn't seen before. You know, I never was involved in the bookkeeping and the insurance and the dealing with the lenders and that type of thing, and taxes. Dale, as you know, still involved some, but very limited. But I'm finally on top of that. Really, we do everything exactly like my dad and my uncle always did it because that's what worked. But one thing that we did, Rodney and I are doing differently is that we put in it's a log yard, and we hired a man or an employee as a mercantile, and his job is to market those logs to different companies throughout the world. A lot of it goes to Asia, a lot of it goes into staves for the barrels, but that's something that's a new market. We've dabbled in it over the years, but we kind of got a lot more serious in it. It was something that I'd always wanted to do for the last many years, and I finally, you know, got to call the shots for once. So that's something that we decided to do, and it's been a very good thing for the company, for the business, because it's just kind of a niche that my dad, you know, he was on board with it because he was helping me started. We were getting the area ready for the log yard, because you have to have a place to sort the logs and you know, what you do is you set up sales for different companies, and they come in there and they buy the logs. But anyway, my dad was he was over there on a piece of machinery the same day he passed away, and he was helping us he was helping me
put that log yard in, which, you know, I'd always wanted to do. So that's, it was his very last day. He was doing that. So he went out doing what he liked to do.
I started in 1983, September of 1983. I had just graduated high school, and I had decided that I was not going to go to college. I was going to take a year off. And so Clonch Industries was the first place that I put an application in. I got a call, I believe it was the following day, and I started the following Monday. And I've been here ever since.
Oh my gosh, you started just that quickly. And you interviewed with Huey and Dale?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it was Dale, mostly.
Okay.
What
were they looking for? What was the job?
Just someone to help in the office. Yeah, I came in the first day of work, walked in the door. I was extremely nervous. And the secretary said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, I'm here to start work." And she was shocked because she had no idea that they had hired anybody to help her.
They hadn't told her
They hadn't told her. I don't think they were even in the office.
You've been here since '83.
Mm-hmm.
And you wear a lot of hats. I know. Currently, what's your job here now? What's your day-to-day look like?
My job is salesperson and office manager. So I just make sure everything's is being taken care of in the office and just sell lumber, mostly on the phone and sending emails, taking orders. When I first started, we had no computers. Wow. I can remember the day we got the first computer. It was a Radio Shack, and we were going to do our payroll on it. And it was huge. It took up a whole desk. Or probably 3/4 of the desk. And I remember it was in the back office. And Huey and Dale wanted no part of that computer. And I would go to turn it on, and they didn't even want to be in the same room while it was running. I would have to wait until they would leave the room to turn the computer on to do the computer work. So we typed up our invoices. Yeah. Everything was done by dot tally. So each board, there was a dot on a tally. So each board represented a dot, and it would have the width of the board and the length of the board on that dot tally. And then when they would get done grading that they would bring us the dot tallies, and we would add them up to know what footages we had in the bundles. Versus now the computer does it. The bundle goes in front of the computer, and the computer takes a picture of the end of the bundle, and the person running it will put in the grade and the species and the thickness, and the computer takes a picture and calculates the footages. One of the things Huey used to say was he was faster. He could add up a dot tally faster than the computer could do it. So I challenged him one day, and he just laughed because he knew it was impossible. So when we changed over to using the computers for our logs and our lumber. But at the end of each month, you work up your stumpage report and send to the landowners, so we would pay the landowners. So we had always had each load of logs that was brought in was on one of those tickets where they were hand wrote. Well, when we started using the computer, of course, we had a computer printout of that load. So when we went to do the stumpage at the end of the month, I printed them all off, and I was going to send that with the check. And Dale wouldn't let me do it. He made me handwrite everything from the computer over to one of the old sheets that we used to send, because he said, no, the company is not going to want that. They're going to want what they're used to, which was the old sheets. So I would take, it seemed like a long time, to handwrite every load of logs by the species. You had to put the diameter and the length. You had to do all that, write all that down on each sheet. So, it might be 60 loads or 75 loads, and I had to handwrite it all out for him because Dale didn't want to send the computer printout. I've done a lot of different things over the years, but right after I started, Huey decided he was going to make me a log scaler. And I said, no, you're not. And he said, yes, I am. Let's go to the log yard. I'm going to teach you to scale logs. I said, no, you're not. I'll go with you, but you're not going to teach me. And so we argued for a while, and we went over to the log yard, and we were over there for probably an hour and a half with him teaching me how to scale logs. And then he finally looked at me and he says, you're right. I'm not going to teach you to scale logs. You don't know a poplar from a red oak. So that was the end of my log scaling.
I'm Clonch Industries' first full-time forester. Before I was hired in 1991, they used consulting foresters when they needed a forester. Before that time, they didn't need a forester. But as things changed and competition increased, they found the need to have their own forester, and I went with them in 1991. Now, I'd worked 20 years for the state of West Virginia in the forestry division. And when I went into forestry, I wanted to be a forester from the time I was in grade school. And my dream was to go to work for the Forest Service and go out west. My senior year in forestry school, the Forest Service came to interview, and in that interview they said, we will move you once every 5 years because our goal is to teach our employees to be managers. And so you will move at least once every 5 years. I didn't even put an application in. So I went to work for forestry division. I said to myself when I graduated, I will never work for a sawmill only because I did not want the pressure of having to keep a sawmill fed with logs. I did not want that. Well, unknown to me, things changed, and after 20 years with forestry, I found out things that were going on I didn't like, so I decided I'm going to leave. And at the time, Clonches were looking for a forester, and they hired me. I asked them when they wanted me to start to work, and they said first of the year, January 1. So on January 2nd, I came to work. They said, where were you yesterday, Jerry? I said, home watching football like every other red-blooded American male. They said, we worked. I said, nobody works New Year's Day. They said, we worked. I said, I am so sorry. I missed my first day of work. But I got to tell you, I swore I'd never work for a sawmill, and now I'm about to tell you the end of that story. I worked for them for 26 years, and then 8 years semi-retired. And I can look back on 46 and a half years of full-time employment and 8 years part-time, and my best, most rewarding experiences were with Clonch Industries and working at a job I swore I would never do. And the thing that made it enjoyable was, my fear was I didn't want that pressure of feeding the sawmill, but because Huey and Dale Clonch had such a good relationship with large landowners and with people, I never had to knock on doors once in my entire career. Will you sell us timber? Huey and Dale had contacts, and people respected them, and people called us, and we never had to, one time, beg for timber. We had it. We were talking this morning, we had duties that we didn't even know were our job description. Whatever Huey and Dale wanted, we did. Our primary job is to keep the mill supplied with logs. And so we spent all our time in the woods. We didn't work on the sawmill end of the business. That was Huey and Dale's forte. Our job was to buy logs and get them to the mill. Well, that involved looking at large tracts, small tracts, finding out if there's enough timber on them that needs to be cut to be operable or commercially feasible, then figuring out how much timber's there, which is a real challenge, and bidding against competition for that timber, figuring out how best to estimate the acres of timber that can be cut, because you got fire burned areas, you got areas that have been strip mined, you got areas that have been cut. So it's really a challenge. But every property we went to was a new challenge, different scenery, and that's what made it nice. I have to share one quote a guy told me when I hired on the forestry to be, he trained me, 1970, that's a long time ago. He said, Jerry, when it gets so bad that people are getting on your nerves and you can't stand it, hit the woods, trees don't talk. And we always laughed about that. We could always go to the woods and enjoy our job. But in addition to figuring out how much timber's there, we had to look and see how's it going to be logged. Is it going to be logged uphill, which is more expensive, or downhill? Is there a place to put a log landing? Where's the haul road going to go? Does it need a right-of-way? The boundaries. We had to buy timber and pay cash, lump sum, with no survey. Surveys take a lot of time. We had to figure it out as close as we could without making a survey. If we made a survey and then we didn't get to bid, all that time and expense would be for nothing. So that was a real challenge. Many times we were right here late at night figuring boundaries as close as we could, and then we would make our crews, and then we had to prepare a contract. We had to do the logging registration with the forestry division. We had to check with the logger periodically and make sure they cut according to the requirements of our contract. So we had to work with them closely. And I got to say, they made our job easy. We had, because of the good relationship, again, with Huey and Dale Clonch, they treated the loggers good and paid them well. And when they needed something, they let us get them, gravel, or work with them. And because of that, they stayed with us. And we're not training somebody new. And they made it easy for us. And people that saw their work would call us up and say, Clonch Industries bought this guy's timber. It looks great. I want you to buy my timber. And that made it really nice. So the reputation of Huey and Dale Clonch and their knowledge of large landowners and a good reputation with people around made it easy for us to buy timber, which was my greatest fear. I want to share a few things that impressed me about working for Clonch Industries. The number one is Huey and Dale Clonch put in more hours than anyone in this mill, including me and Brian. Dale Clonch, I don't even know what time he actually came. A few times I came in at 5:30. He's here. He was here. He was here hours, and Huey too, after everybody had gone home. Okay, secondly, they would roll up their sleeves and help workers. If they were working on something that was broken down, they're there helping. And let me tell you, when you're an employee and you got bosses that work like that, it's easy to put the extra work in. But when they're just doing the minimum amount, you just do the minimum amount. But because they worked hard, we didn't mind going above, and we worked way more than 40 hours a week. Non-pay, we were salaried, because they did. Their love of the sawmilling is incredible. They did it because they loved it. Not to get rich, they did it because they loved it. And that brings up a story. One time, we saw one of the best tracts of timber we had ever seen in our life. And we took pictures of that timber. And we wanted to make sure Huey and Dale knew how beautiful that timber was, so we showed them those pictures. And Huey Clonch said, we bought the timber, it worked. He got the timber. He said, don't show me another picture of another tract of timber. I couldn't think of anything else but that beautiful timber and what grade lumber we would get out of that timber. I couldn't sleep without thinking of that timber. He said, don't bring me any more pictures. So we did. I said, what trees do you harvest and what ones you're not interested in? They only gave me one answer, and that was good enough for me. They said, if you cut these, have cut these 3 species, you'll be fired. That's all I had to know. You know, we don't want tree of heaven, we don't want black gum, and we don't want sycamore at the time. The red oaks and the white oaks and the yellow poplar were their 3 main, and sugar maple, hard maple favored. But they loved the sawmill end, and we loved the woods end, and worked together. And I can say, looking back, it's the most fun I've ever had, the hardest work I've ever had, but the most fun and challenging. And greatest memory of what it means to work for Clonch Industries is this. In the mid-1980s, the economy in the United States had a drastic downturn. Lumber prices were low, lumber wasn't selling, sawmills were going out of business, sawmills were laying off foresters, sawmills couldn't even sell their lumber and get out what they paid for it, so they were losing money. And we saw a lot of our comrades that we competed against get laid off. So we're wondering, gee, there's only 2 of us, and a lot of the mills we competed with had 5. And a lot of those got laid off. Huey came into this office and he said, fellas, I know you're worried about your job because of this downturn. He said, we're worried too, but I want you to know, and this is something that the family needs to understand. He said, I want you to know one thing we did that our competitors didn't do, and that's why they're shutting their doors. We did not overextend ourselves on credit. He said, we'll get through this rough time. The mills that are closing couldn't get through this rough time because they financed and they were paying this high interest, and they couldn't get anything out of their lumber, what lumber they could sell. He said, we'll get through this. And then he said this. He said, supply and demand works. In other words, yeah, right now we can't sell the lumber, but the demand will increase because the supply is going to go down. And he said, it works, it just takes time. And I never forgot that, and it's so true. And it's good to work for a company like that.
Okay, I'm Brian Stevenson, and I started at Clonch Industries on April the 20th of 1997. Been here for 28 years, and this is all I know.
Did you know you wanted to be a forester when you were a kid?
I did in high school, but unfortunately, my guidance counselor in high school swayed me away from it because she showed me the salaries of the West Virginia Division of Forestry, the state, which were minimal at the time. So that made me veer off. But I went into business management and printing management at West Virginia Tech and graduated from there. And I interviewed at Alloy plant and the Toyota plant down at Buffalo. And both of them called me and offered me a job. And it was on a Friday evening. And Huey called me and asked me to come up and talk to him and Dale. So I go up in the office there, and he asked me if I ever thought about being a forester. And I said, I have, but this is why I didn't. And we talked there for an hour and a half, and when I left, he said, be here at 6:30 in the morning. So that's how it started. Wow. And he said, I do want you to get your forestry degree. And he sent me to school.
Where'd you go to school?
Glenville.
Okay.
Yeah, and at the time, I got most of it at Summersville. They had that extension in Summersville.
Nice.
Which made it convenient.
Have you had any regrets?
None.
Going into forestry?
None. I love it.
What are some of the challenges you have nowadays with being a forester?
What's changed the most is the employees, finding workers, contractors. You know, used to be when Jerry or I bought a tract of timber, you took the logger out there, showed them the timber, they moved on it to cut it. Now, there's 2/3 less loggers in the state. A lot have went out of business, and the loggers are very picky about what they'll cut and not cut. So instead of just going and buying timber, I take them out, walk it before I put a price on it, and make sure they're going to cut it,
Wow.
because they can pick and choose where they want to go, because they know they're in demand. That's the biggest change.
It's a lot of pressure on your
Yeah.
shoulders.
Yeah, it is. It is, but I like it.
You love your job.
Yeah, I do. I've known the Clonch family since I was born, right across the street from them, and about every summer, my dad and Huey grew a garden, and we would go up Bell Creek and work the garden, and always had a well house full of potatoes for the winter.
Nice.
And Huey would occasionally pick me up and ride me around up here at the mill. We'd ride around and to the bark plant when the bark plant was still going. Then I, started working with them. That's been the best decision I made. I mean, it's they're good people, top notch. But and when I started here, Huey told me he wanted me to get a forestry degree also, and I just got out of school and I wasn't really thrilled about going back. But I did, and it took me a couple years to get it, but I got it. And the schooling I received, 10 schools couldn't have taught me what my associate, Jerry Atkins, has. He is super intelligent, very knowledgeable, and can get down on my level to explain things.
He's been a great mentor.
Yes.
Huh?
Top, they don't come any better. He mentioned Huey and Dale and their work ethic.
Yeah.
And I didn't witness this, but the log scaler and the lumber grader at the time was telling me about your dad, Dale. And they had some kind of special order for, I think he said soft maple or hard maple. And they were out on the chain stacking, and your dad, Dale, cut his hand. And he was bleeding pretty bad, and he told Jerry Tanner, who was the lumber grader at the time, to go get him a glove. He didn't want to get blood on the boards, but he wasn't going to quit. He didn't want to ruin the product with blood, but
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
That's the kind of guys they are.
They're gonna get it done.
Yeah,
Get it
they
done.
like Jerry said, they rolled their sleeves up and did it. I can remember seeing Huey coming out of a mill with grease in his hair when he had hair.
Well, Dad has said that he, of the two of them, the most mechanically inclined, and he could
Yeah.
fix or make about anything
Yeah.
needed to be
Yep.
done.
Your dad was one of the smartest people I've ever met. He's super intelligent.
What's the most challenging or rewarding part about your job?
I really am a sports-oriented guy, and I like the competition factor, competing against people. It's a win. It's winning and losing is the way I look at it.
Are you actually out there too while it's being harvested?
Yeah, I usually go to, I think I have 8 contractors now. And I'll usually try to make a trip to the job once every week or two,
Oh, okay.
just to see their progress and make sure everything's going as it should.
Yeah. Tell me what you think in the last 5 years since the pandemic swept through and a lot of other sawmills had to shut down. What's your opinion on why Clonch Industries is still standing?
I think Huey and Dale made very smart decisions and didn't get deep in debt. Everybody that I know that has shut down, that's the reason. The banks have cut them off, said enough. And they left Scott and Rod in very good shape as far as, I don't know if they're debt free, but they didn't know a whole lot anyway. But it's amazing how many sawmills that have went out of business in the last 5 years. It's and Scott and Rod and I talk about it all the time. And there's going to be a point where lumber's going to explode because supply and demand always works, as Huey said. And there's just hardwood lumber's at the lowest production it has ever been right now. And eventually, that's going to help. I think if we can stockpile some lumber, they'll be sitting in a good position to do very well.
I'd like to share one true story that gives people an idea of the rugged conditions that we work in. And one day Huey Clonch wanted to go with Brian Stevenson to look at a tract that was for sale out in a remote section of Clay County. So they got to their destination. Brian was driving the company truck that he had been provided with, and Huey was a passenger. When they got out, Huey walked along the back of the truck toward the rear, and he noticed this unusual fender damage. And he said, "Brian, no one in this entire world could put a dent like that in a fender. What in the world happened?" And Brian, as you can see, is real calm and collected, doesn't get upset, riled up very easy. In fact, I never saw him riled up. He said, "Well, Huey, it's really easy. When you're on a steep mountain dirt road that's ice covered and you're sliding down the hill backwards doing a 360. Huey never said another word.
Okay, as Jerry had mentioned before, several of the larger landholders that we had timber contracts on, we provided fire protection. And we had a fire up on Little Elk Mountain in Nicholas County. And we hired one of the logging contractors to go up there with his bulldozer and doze a road around the fire.
I'm leaving.
So, when we got done, we put the fire out, the fire goes out. We go up there to seed the dozer road that we had made to prevent erosion. So Jerry is riding the four-wheeler stacked full of seed. We had 5 or 6, 7 bags of seed on it, and I'm walking behind the four-wheeler with the seeder. Well, the dozer operator just went where it was convenient and easy to knock the material out of the way to prevent fire from crossing. Well, he turned down over a steep hill, and I'm seeding out through there, and I see Jerry. I'd already taken all the bags off the back, so all the weight's on the front. And I'm walking out this road seeding, and I see the four-wheeler turn over, and the rear tires come over, and the four-wheeler rolls all the way down in the hollow. And we had to come back to my house, I think, and get chains and come-alongs and ropes and everything to reach the four-wheeler. And we get it up out of there, and of course the plastic's ripped off of it. So, in the next week or so, I approached Huey about getting another four-wheeler because Jerry had tore ours up. And he asked me a good question. He said, "Brian, what did foresters do before four-wheelers?" Walked. So that was a good one.
That was his answer, huh?
I started back in October of 22. They told me that the position was available, and they asked me if I'd be interested in coming here. And I mean, being around it my whole life, I definitely wanted to, just to be a part of it. And
You are already familiar with the machine that you're working on. Tell us a little bit about what your machine does.
Well, no, I had never ran anything like that before in my life. And it's basically they just put the logs up there with the bark on it, and then I go through and take off the bark, any debris like rocks or any heavy dirt or anything like that. And it's just real simple.
Hey, are you in that cab pretty much for how many hours are you working that?
We're at 10 hours.
You're kidding.
Yep. And of course we stop to, clean and, they'll have to move like dust bins and stuff like that. But yeah, besides that, from 6:30 to 5.
What kind of issues do you have?
Sometimes, the belts will, go a little wonky or something, sometimes there might be a wire that wiggles loose or, sometimes it's just little simple things like that. There's hundreds of logs go through there.
Every day.
Every day.
And you gotta have eyes on each one that's coming through.
Yeah, you got to watch for make sure there's nothing in them like metal or.
Like what kind of metal would be in them?
Sometimes I think like I could say they go out somewhere and there might be like a barbed wire or. Just I've pulled out pieces of like the metal strap that they use down here. I've pulled out some out of the bark out of it.
Really?
Yeah, just anything foreign that might destroy the saws or something like that.
What's your earliest memory of the sawmill?
I actually remember them doing the log rolling down in Golly Bridge.
Really? Did you hang out with your dad or with your grandpa Huey?
Oh yeah, both of them. I remember riding around with Huey a lot. He'd always take me around around the log yard or just anywhere he'd go.
Would he explain to you what you were looking at? I mean, would he say?
He'd try to.
Did he take you up in any of the equipment or any of the...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember riding on stuff with him, loaders and bulldozers and everything like that. That was his favorite thing. He loved to get in a machine and just take off.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Absolutely.
And then walks in the woods.
Oh, really? When he was like cruising timber or something?
Well, even behind his house, there's that road that goes up through there.
Yes.
We would walk up through there, and I remember him always walking, what kind of tree's that? What kind of tree's that?
He was teaching you how to identify
yeah.
them by the bark or by the leaves. Do you remember?
Now I recognize them mostly by the leaves. But where I've been doing that, I'm getting to where I can recognize a lot more with the bark and stuff like that. And hickory, it's sometimes you'll have to go over it twice to get it to break up. I mean, it's just stuck to the log. But like poplar, like the whitewood and stuff, like poplar and basswood, like whenever sap's down, I mean, that bark will just roll off. Yeah, whenever I started, they taught me how to, take care of the boiler, what to watch for, what needs done. They taught me how to run the planer, like if surface loads need to go out, I could take care of that for them.
And when you mentioned the boiler, for people who don't know, the boiler runs the kilns.
Yeah, it fuels
right?
the kilns.
It fuels the kilns,
yeah.
So it's pretty important to keep that
yes.
boiler going.
Yes.
And not everybody knows how to keep that thing going.
No, there's just a handful of people here that take care of it.
I'm Harrison Scott Clonch. I am I guess kind of like a manager. I am a grader, a operator of equipment, a welder, just sort of everything. Definitely learned a lot over the years here. Most of it was taught by my grandpa Huey. He really mentored me a lot, whether I wanted it or not. A lot of the times it was a fight, but I really do appreciate everything that he's done for me in terms of, he taught me how to work on equipment, how to make sure everything's kept up, how to clean tracks on a dozer, just little things that eventually led to how to run a lift or how to weld or prepare a piece of machinery for work or anything. He sent me to grading school to learn how to grade.
Oh, where did you go for that?
So funny enough, there was a short course in Elkins that I went to, and it was just like a week. And I came out and worked with our head grader, Dakota Hughes, that we have down here. Mm-hmm. And I worked with him maybe about half a year. And after that, I was on my own chain, just running. Wow. So after a log is sawn and it's dried and sent over to us in the form of a board, a grader then determines the grade of the board or the value of the board. So in something like poplar, we have a couple grades like FAS, which is perfect, 1 common, 2 common, and we'll lay out like miscut or re-edge. Miscut is a board that's a little bit too thick. Usually we'll have it at 1 inch or maybe 1 inch and 1/16. And
Are those still usable? You can still sell those?
oh yeah, we'll send them over to the planer, and right now that's me sending it to me. So I'll send it over to me to send through the planer to bring it down to actual size or standard surface thickness. I was brought down here maybe 12 or 13, or just on a snow day to help out, make a little bit of money, and after that it was every summer, well until college, and then I had after college I'd moved to North Carolina for a little bit with my wife Katie and our kids, and I had come back. Huey wanted me back because I'd worked here, on and off for a bit, and started working specifically under Huey over at the shop, working on equipment, cleaning equipment, and after that I started rebuilding old motors and reducers, and just rebuilding them, ordering the bearings, putting new bearings in, repainting them, putting them on a mount, and a couple of them have actually been used when the boiler's been down to keep it going. And then after that he discovered that I can drive a forklift. I didn't get to do a full project. I helped with a fair little bit of it, but I actually helped James Green with the some of the cabin on his property as well. As a kid, I always used to look at this place and think, one day I'm gonna work there, and it was always just it wasn't always the best thought, because as a kid you want to go out and you want to live your own life and do whatever, but it seems like every road has always led me back here. And I love this job more than any other job I've ever attempted. I would rather do this than anything. And I will probably die down here because I don't think I'm ever going to be done working. It's the only thing I think I can do at this point.
You get a lot of satisfaction out of working here.
I do take a lot of pride in this place, and I just want to see it keep doing what it's doing, and maybe one day even do something bigger than what it's doing.
Yeah. Well, you've been here how many years? I mean, you said you started when you were around 13, and you're 30 now. So you've been doing this a good while.
Well, mind you, that has
you had a break.
A lot of breaks in between.
Okay.
But if we're running consistently, this time I've been back maybe about 6 or 7 years. And then before that, it was 4 or 5 years, and then just that.
Is it fair to say that the older you get, the more you appreciate working here?
I would say so, yeah. There's just something in it that I almost feel like a connection to everyone I've ever known that was, a man in the family's always done it. And it's just, I think that's awesome. And my son now says that he wants to do this one day.
Thank you so much for watching my first attempt at a full-length documentary. I started this project in 2021 because I had a great interest in history. I'm a history buff, and I'm very proud of my family's business, the sawmill. I think forevermore the smell of sawdust and fresh cut wood will take me back to my childhood and bring a smile to my face. But I began because I grew up around horses. I had a very keen interest on learning more about the teams of horses that my great-grandfather and my grandfather used to log. I thought that was just a really rich piece of history that I wanted to bring to light for the family now and for future generations. And unfortunately, I was not able to find one single photograph of the teams of horses that were used by Clonch Industries or Clonch Lumber back in the day. And so that's how I met Steve of Bear Hill Horse Logging in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Steve, so much for helping me out. He's been very generous with his time and answering questions. I joined a logging forum online so that I could learn more about how the horses have been used through the years to pull logs out of the woods, and I have enjoyed that aspect so much. But it's thanks to Steve that I have the clips of the horses going through the woods. That was so central to the story to me to share that going through history, and there's 100 years of Clonch Industries. So it's been a wonderful project. I'm very thankful that I started it when I did. I lost my Aunt Deanna and my Uncle Huey both in 2022. May their memories be eternal. So I feel very grateful that I was able to interview Huey when I did. I could sit and listen to him tell stories all day long. He had such a great memory, great recall to recall things even from his childhood. I just found it fascinating. Of course, it afforded me a lot of opportunity for daddy-daughter time too. I enjoyed running around with my dad, and he was with me for a lot of the times I went to do drone shots and explore locations, and he was always there to provide details and the narration. And I'm just grateful for my cousins, everybody that was a part of this project that helped me to pull it together, and I hope it's something that will honor the family. You know, this project evolved as I went through the motions. And it took me this long, since 2021, to complete it because, well, one, with my aunt and uncle passing away, I really shelved the project for a while. It just wasn't the time to go about seeking interviews and talking to people about this during that time. And then I experienced a long period of kind of writer's block, creative block. I had initially intended to make this about a 30-minute at the most video to just do a timeline of the history, just to tell the important facts along the way. But as I started to interview people, I realized this is it's so rich, the stories of the relationships, the connections between some of the long-term employees and the Clonches, and it just became a lot more than what I originally intended, thankfully so. I hope that's captured well, and there's so much more I could tell. That was difficult for me to try to whittle down. I had so many hours of clips to go through and trying to whittle it down. I hope you'll be pleased with this first attempt. It was a great joy for me to do that. And I also hope that it appeals to a general audience too. I mean, that was part of my goal, to share, how a sawmill works for somebody who was just interested in sawmills, how it worked, how the machinery works, how these folks do their jobs, what's required. So I hope there's a little bit for everyone. Thank you so much for being here.